Have you ever noticed any of these things about your BMLs? They're not working independently, they can't decipher instructions, they can't organize their learning, or they're struggling in writing their thoughts or expressing themselves in the written form. And if that's the case, then really you're not alone. I think that all teachers
Mm.
have had that struggle at some time in their teaching career. And I think we're always looking for the solutions and the ways about how to find lessons and
Yeah.
to help our BMLs thrive. But I think what we want to do today is to say to teachers not to worry. I think we're going to give them the solution and the secret of how they can actually help their BMLs thrive. I think, though, before that, I think we want to take a look at a typical BML secondary high school student's expectations, perhaps for just 1 week.
Okay, so they've got history. They might be thinking about preparing for their debate about revolutions. They work in English. They have to read and summarize 2 chapters for that week. They have an algebra test. They might have a science lab report. They have to prepare from their experiment. And they might also have a PE quiz about different vocabulary and maybe methods that they're using for their game. So that's actually quite a lot and a very heavy and complex schedule of activities that they've got to work on.
Yeah, and it's very common for these students to actually to struggle with that and actually to spend a lot of time on that. And I think often what happens in this case is that teachers see that
Yeah,
the students either go for additional classes after school in
yeah,
order
like
to kind of
tutoring or that kind of
tutoring. Yeah, they are either put into a kind of separate ESL program
yeah.
within
That
the
focuses
school.
on language, maybe.
Yeah. And I think they also spend hours and hours on their own, even in the library or at home, where they're trying to struggle through all of this academic content on their own to get through all that work. And I think there's a better way that we
There
can
is.
help our students to do to get that, to access that learning and to do it quite quickly.
There is. So let me tell you, the better way is all about really understanding and getting to the heart of the matter. Now, you could tackle all the different issues your BMLs are going to have, struggling with reading and all of those things we mentioned. But actually, it's better if we pull the lens back and we take a broader look at what is the bigger issue here. So, the solution or the secret always comes back to listening, speaking, reading, and writing, right?
Yeah,
So
that's right.
this is where you have to put your emphasis. And we always tell schools, think about how you can put more enrichment into these 4 areas so that you're building such a solid and strong foundation so that it trickles through all of the academic programs so that you're not just going bitty issue by issue. You're actually putting the area putting your focus on real impact, areas that have real impact. So I think if we
Yeah.
look at listening, that would mean in your lessons, you're actually breaking down your instructions to make sure students can hear at their level and comprehend. It means that for speaking, you are giving or creating opportunities in every single lesson for your students to have conversations about what they're learning. That is a very underrated activity, but it's something that gives a lot of it gives them a lot of practice with vocabulary and that kind of thing. So you need an opportunity for them to connect with a partner or a group.
And
And
if they can speak it, then they're able to write it more
yeah,
easily, right?
yeah, well,
That,
all of these interlink, right? That's why it's so powerful. And then if you talk about the reading skills, it
yeah.
doesn't matter what the ages of your students are, whether they're young students or older or secondary students, they all need to have a reading program. That
Program.
means they all need to be working at individual or guided reading programs. So they have to have a leveled reading book that they have. I'm not talking about the library books, that's a separate thing. So, what needs to happen is that these reading books are at the level where they're currently at. So, if they're 2 or 3 years below their grade level, that's totally fine. Because what we want to do is move students incrementally, step by step, to move forward. And what often happens is that they're not using the right, uh, they're not given enough reading materials, so they actually stagnate. So they're at the bottom rung on a ladder, and you're trying to get them to the top. So there's no way you can jump from the bottom to the top. You have to go very incrementally, step by step. Now you can go fast, right? But it just means that you have to go step by step. So to do that, teachers really have to um, be sure they know what level the student is reading at, and they give them books that are at that easy level. Okay, so it can be books that students can read at their level that are easy, so they're not spending a lot of time dealing with too many challenges that will pull away from their thinking and learning and comprehension. So, you know, if we focus on that, we'll really move them forward. And then when we talk about writing, we'll be able to get students to students need to be practicing writing, some form of independent writing every single day.
Yep.
Again, and it has to be to the point where they are writing their thoughts down, expressing their ideas, and they're actually building fluency with the whole process, which is actually a complex process of writing. So they're learning to think and write at the same time, and then use the vocabulary words, and that's going to become more automatic. So by you focusing on all these different areas, and we call them enrichment, enriching areas, then you will be building the solid foundation that will actually trickle through every other area, right?
Yeah, and I think teachers need to take a second and just think about that. I think they
Yeah.
need to think about, what does their school do? What enrichment programs do they have? And are they allowing their students, their BMLs in particular, to
Mhm.
have these experiences? And are they interwoven
Yeah,
into the fabric of their lessons? I mean, that's really
that's
where
the
the
crux.
crux. Yeah. So that's really the only solution, is to plan for our BMLs to flourish day by day by doing these four things.
Yeah, and they can really be done. It
Yep.
doesn't mean if you're the science teacher, you're focusing on the reading. No, you together as a team are coming together to make sure all of those things are happening across their whole program, right? It might be
Yeah.
happening in the English teacher's class, but you were focusing a lot on the other elements that you can within your specific
Yeah.
subject.
I think some teachers, I mean, teachers work sometimes individually and they're putting out fires here. So they're going to be putting a fire out there and there and there. And I think, as you say, take a step back and work as a complete team
Yeah,
and say, because it's all interwoven,
that's right.
and the language is interwoven. And so you really need to look back and say, how can we tackle this as a whole school with
Exactly.
our whole academic program, rather than individually at each subject
Yeah,
level? Or,
and sometimes when that doesn't happen, you start to see, you know, one teacher doing it really well, and then another teacher in the
yeah,
same grade level who is tackling it in a different approach. And then, you know, parents start to see differences in you know, the groups of students and what they're learning in the same grade level. So this is a way you can be more cohesive, and you plan your approaches very strategically. So I think
yeah,
when you have students who are reading every day, we create readers who understand what they're reading, and who learn more vocabulary words, right? When we have students who are writing every day, we create students who are becoming very proficient and independent in sharing their thoughts.
that's right. And when you have students who are listening and who are speaking well, then they're participating better in
Yeah.
the classroom, and they're much more independent in their learning too, right? So I think we need to ask teachers now just to go away and have a discussion
Yeah.
with their colleagues, whole school, and just see how many of these four enriching experiences are actually embedded
Mhm.
into their lessons
Yeah.
and into the
Could be a new
curriculum.
starting point to think about where they need to focus on.
Yeah.